Most of the time, people get algae for two reasons.
Rinsey, rinsey, rinsey.
So how often do you have to clean your fish tank? Without further ado, let's get in and show you how it's done. Hey guys, Dylan with Fish For You here, back at it again with another video. Today we're going to be covering everything aquarium maintenance related. What you can be doing for your maintenance, the most effective way to do that, and what you can do to cut back on your maintenance in your aquarium. Alright, so you guys might be wondering, why do we even have to do fish tank maintenance? Well, if you want to keep your fish healthy, you're going to need to do maintenance on them. There's something called the nitrate cycle. A lot of people call it the water cycle. I'll show you what that is right here on screen. So you have your food that you're going to be feeding to your aquarium. They're going to consume that food and then they're going to poop. That poop is going to break down in your aquarium and it's going to turn into ammonia. Then that ammonia will get broken down by microorganisms and turned into nitrates. And then from there, the nitrates will turn into nitrates. Again, same process by being broken down. Now, why are nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia bad? Well, ammonia and nitrates are extremely toxic to your fish. I know ammonia gives them ammonia burns. It can physically burn the fish. The nitrates, I'm assuming similar thing. The nitrates, though, they're a lot less toxic. So whereas ammonia might be bad in 5 parts per million, nitrates, you can go up to 50 parts per million sometimes and not have anywhere near as bad of consequences as you would with the ammonia. So we're looking to get nitrates in our tank. That way we can do a water change, take those nitrates out, and replace it with clean water. What I do when I clean 4 things. I clean the glass because I want it to look pretty. I clean the gravel. I clean the water, and I clean the filter. So those are the 4 things that I clean. And that's really the only 4 necessary things that you should be cleaning when you're doing a fish tank. Okay, so without further ado, let's get in and show you how it's done.
So you'll be able to see here with my finger, this does not come off at all. It is on there.
We need something like this. Now, you don't necessarily need this, but I feel this is the best way because I don't even have to stick my hands in the tank and get wet. What this is, it's a magnet. This side's going to stay on the outside. You can see it's got nice felt, and then this side's got all of these little hooks on it. They're going to scrape off the algae off the side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll check back in with you afterwards. You can also use a sponge. Now, when you're using the sponge, be careful. You want to make sure that this part is fabric and not metal, because if this is metal, it's going to scrape up your glass and scratch your glass all over. But it's going to be way more effective for removing large amounts of algae quickly. You can see how much stuff is getting stirred up into the tank as I'm cleaning this, because all the water is sloshing around. That's why it's very important to do this before you change your water. Perfect, so now we have a tank where the front glass is completely clean of algae. So the next thing we have to do is to clean all of the substrate. So because you're feeding food and everything's pooping, all the poop's going to go down to the bottom of the tank and it's going to settle in the substrate. Now you might not see it because this does look pretty clean, but if you get closely and you look at it, you'll see there's mulm, and then there will be a lot more of that mulm underneath the actual layer of sand. Okay, so we need the bucket and we need a gravel vacuum for this. So gravel vacuum, these are really, really, really helpful. All it is it's one end where the big end where you're going to stick it into the tank, and then the smaller end is going to go into the bucket, and this will allow you to squeeze and to create an actual flow. So the way you gravel vacuum, a lot of people don't really know this, but if you put the gravel vacuum in, let me get a better angle so you can see this, in the tank like this, all the way under. Most people stick it in like this. However, if you stick it in all the way under like this, it's way easier to actually get a flow going. As you can see, I only pumped it 3, maybe 4 times and I have a flow going. So now that I do have that going, what I'm going to do is take it, I'm going to stick it down into the substrate all the way, wiggle it around a little bit, and then lift it up and let the substrate fall out. Okay, if you do have sand going up there, you can also take the top of it and give it a nice pinch when the substrate's going up. I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and get substrate in it. Okay, now that it's all in there, we're going to give it a pinch. Substrate will fall out and the dirt will stay in. So we're going to go ahead and do this to the entire bottom. The larger a tank you have, the larger gravel vac usually works for it, but go ahead and do this to the majority of the bottom as much as we can get, so we can get all the dirt out of there. That's the tank water, and that's how dirty that is. So this is a very necessary step. We just took a lot of ammonia, nitrates, and nitrates out of that tank by doing this. So now that the bucket is taken out and emptied and the filter and heater are unplugged here, we're gonna go ahead and clean the filter. Easiest way to do this, you're gonna wanna use dechlorinated water or tank water. I find tank water is the easiest. All right, so now I got some water out of the tank, and I'm gonna go ahead and grab my filter. And the easiest way to clean filters, now this is gonna be a sponge filter I'm using in this tank, but I will show you for a hang-on back as well in case you have that. Those are the most common types of filters that are used in the aquarium hobby, so those are the only two I'm gonna cover in this video. So I'm gonna take my sponge filter, gonna make sure there's nothing on it. I have a lot of fish, a lot of snails, make sure there's no snails in there. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in this water and then just give it a good couple squeezes, try and clean it out, you know, get as much dirt out of there as I can.
Yeah, well, my finger was covering the microphone here, but I was trying to say that this is just from cleaning the filter. It was clean water before I cleaned the filter, and now it looks like sewage. So make sure you do this.
All right, and I have a hang-on back filter on this one. So if you do have a hang-on back filter, you're just gonna do the exact same thing. Go ahead and take one of these sections out. You can see you're gonna wanna turn the filter off before you do this, not like I just did. But take one of these sections off. Gonna go ahead and plop it into the tank water. Good rinsey, rinsey, rinsey. See how much cleaner that is already. And the same thing with this, rinsey, rinsey, rinsey. Go ahead and get all the smudge as much as you can off with your hand. It's dirty. Make sure you wash your hands after this. Don't want to get any gross funguses. But just make sure you wash both sides with your hand. The company that sells these filter pads for the hang-on backs is going to tell you to replace them every like 2 months or 3 months. But if you do this with your filter pads, you can get a longer life out of them for sure. Just make sure every time you change your water, just go ahead and rinse them out. And I mean, it doesn't look great, but it's going to filter water a lot more effectively. There's going to be a lot less gunk in there. See how dirty the water is. And we still have our beneficial bacteria. So then you're just going to go ahead and put this back inside. Boop. And boom. And there you go. Now the reason I said you want to turn that off is because if you don't, it's going to cloudy your tank water. Now you can see my tank's got a bunch of stuff floating around in it because I didn't turn that off. So go ahead and turn off your hang-on back filter before you do this. Lastly, but definitely the most important, is we got to change the water. So what we're going to do when we change the water is we're going to make sure our filter and our heater, if we have one in the tank, are already unplugged, because we don't want those running while we're changing the water. The heater, most importantly, but if you have a hang-on back filter, you don't want that running without any water on it. You can use a gravel vacuum to change the water simply by just putting it in and then going ahead and starting the siphon. You can do the same thing with a hose going directly to your bathtub. Just make sure you don't siphon up any of your fish. But I'm gonna do it the way that I've always been doing it, and that's just by putting a giant bucket in there. Fits perfectly right in here, and then just scooping it out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and I'll be back with you afterwards. And then with that, I'm gonna be done taking the water out, and all we have to do left is put the water back in. Now we're not gonna put the same water in, we're gonna go ahead and put new water in, But I always recommend doing a 40 to 50% water change, and you don't want to do more than that, because if you do more than that, you're going to throw off the cycle in your tank. However, you really don't want to do less than that either, seeing as if you're at, let's say, 30 parts per million in your nitrates, and you're trying to lower that. Now, if I do a 10% water change, I'm only removing 3 parts per million, so I'm still going to be at 27 parts per million. But if I do 50% water change, now from 30, I'm down to 15 parts per million, which is way better for your tank. And it means you're going to have to do less water changes also. So go ahead, stick with 40 to 50% water changes, and you won't have to do it as often. I'm going to go ahead and fill this back up, and I'll see you when I do that. So when I do my water changes, I do them with a bucket in the bathtub. Is the easiest way. You should have a bathtub, you should have a bucket, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and turn the water on. But when we do that, we want to make sure that the water is as close to our tank's temperature as possible, if not maybe just a little bit colder. But anyway, if you do live in a city, you're going to want to get your hands on some of this. It's Prime, or any sort of dechlorinator. This one is the strongest, and therefore I only trust this one, because where I live, anything else is not going to remove all the chlorine. So we're going to go ahead and put just a little bit of Prime in, and now I know how much to do. It's usually 1 drop per gallon, and this is about a 5-gallon bucket. Doesn't matter if you overdo it too much, but we're going to go ahead and fill up the water then, and let that get full, and then we're going to go ahead and take it and dump it in the tank. So I'll see you back there. Now we got the tank filled all the way up to the top. I don't fill it all the way up. I like to leave a little gap. That's where it's filled up to. We're done with our maintenance. We just have to go ahead and plug in our heater and our filter again and get them running. Yeah, so it doesn't take super long to do it if you do it right. Like, I just did all of the maintenance on a 40-gallon. It took me about 20 to 30 minutes. It's like you're walking your dog, except you don't have to do this every single day. You just got to do this when it's needed. So how often do you have to clean your fish tank? That's a big question for people. How often do I have to do water changes? How often do I have to clean the glass? How often, okay? That's up to you, especially for the glass cleaning. What I will tell you is most of the time people get algae for 2 reasons. One, they are overfeeding. And as an overfeeding, I mean when you feed your fish and you come back 5 minutes later, there's still flake on the bottom. That means you're overfeeding. So the way I like to do it is I give all of my fish 5 minutes to eat. I feed after 5 minutes. If there is still food in the tank, I know I overfed, and I'll feed less the next day. The second tip I can give you is to make sure you only have your light on for 8 hours a day. That's super easy to do if you get like a smart plug in an Alexa. They also have timers on some of the lights nowadays. So 8 hours a day, and you won't have any algae. For me, because we breed a lot of fish, we have our tanks so stocked, I do water changes once a week. I really don't have to do any other maintenance other than water changes and cleaning out my sponge. My gravel vacs, I got Corridoras in those tanks, so they'll keep all of the mulm taken care of in the bottom for me. That's a great tip. So if you want to do as little maintenance as possible, I would recommend getting some Corridoras or some bristlenose plecos. Put those in your tank. Keep in mind they will poop, but they'll keep it looking clean for you. And then also try and keep it stocked decently and not overstocked, or you're going to have to do more water changes than you need to. Realistically, once a month should be fine for your water changes. But just keep in mind it is going to depend on your tank. If you guys found this video informative, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. Go ahead and click subscribe. That'll give me another reason to come back here and post another video. I know I really haven't been good with my upload schedule at all, but I'm going to try and do once a week now. So if you go hit the thumbs up, you click subscribe, that gives me one more reason to come back here and post every single Friday. All right? Be looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Other than that, flop like a fish.
I'm a flop like a fish. I'm a flop like a fish.